Hey guys, so in the past I've been offered trees from various people, black walnut trees, white oak trees, but I've always turned them down because I have no real way of milling those logs. I don't have a sawmill, obviously. I don't have a bandsaw. I have a table saw, but it's only 10-inch and it's a bit underpowered. So yeah, I've just never accepted it. But recently, a couple of weeks ago, a friend offered me some cedar. And these are pretty small logs, and what I want to do with them, the pieces can be 4 foot or less. So I decided to give it a go. And also, the price of red cedar in the Northeast anyway is really climbing. So I just wanted to give it a try. So what I've been doing is I've been debarking it. I don't have a a pull knife, a draw knife. So I just sharpened my hatchet up a little bit, and this works pretty good for taking the bark off. So I've just been using this to take the bark off. I chopped the little limbs off with it. Anything bigger, I just hit it with the battery powered chainsaw. That does a pretty good job. And once I get it to the point where it's stripped of all the bark, I have a couple of tricks to show you to mill it. All right, so let's get into this. It's a little slow, but it works. And I'm not doing much. I'm only doing a few of these 4-footers. All right, so I think you get the hang of that. And if you have a draw knife, I'm sure this is a lot easier. But all right, let's fast forward to the milling. All right, now that I got this more or less bark free, I mean, there's a little bit left, but it's good enough. The next step is the first trick. What I've been doing is just taking the log and finding a halfway decent flat edge and just running it straight through on the joiner like that. I'm not even holding it up against the fence. You can take the fence off. I'm just running it through the joiner, through the jointer. And the first pass, sure, it may not be a perfectly flat surface, but the more passes you make, the more steady this gets, and you'll start getting a flat edge on there. And it doesn't take very much time. The only issue I found is some of these scraggler pieces of bark likes to get caught up on the edge of the table saw. I already have sap here right now just from this one little push. I get sap on the table, so I find that I'm having to clean the table and wax it probably every side that I do, every facet that I do. So let me get this thing fired up and show you. So as you can see, this first pass here is a bit sketchy, a bit rough. That log, you know, it's all uneven, so the first pass is hard to get it through. But it gets easier with each subsequent pass as the face gets flatter and flatter. You can see it takes a bit of pressure to get it through too. That log is wet, so and the sap too. The sap is making it stick to the table, so it's hard to push it through. All right, I think that's looking pretty good now. So now I'm gonna try and get another flat side on this. Okay, now that I have one flat side, I'm keeping that flat side as tight to the fence as I can while keeping pressure on the front half of the joiner, the half closest to the camera. This wasn't that bad with this little joiner. I think anything bigger than 4 foot would have been really tough, and anything bigger than like 6 inches in diameter. This is an 8-inch joiner. The hardest part about pushing it through, again, is just that the cedar is sappy, but it worked out pretty nice. All right, so we're getting there. We're getting a nice flat edge on here. The first few passes don't take a lot off because it's so roller coasty. Only the high spots get taken off, but the flatter you get, the more that comes off. Here's a bit of a better angle so that you can see how the joiner squares up the two sides to make a 90-degree corner. The key is holding it tight to the fence. All right, so now that we've got it to the point where a right angle is more or less established. So here I have a perfect little corner here, and I can see it's very tight. So it's looking pretty good. That's a good 90 there. So now we're gonna move over to the table saw. All right, so now that I have two flat surfaces, a 90-degree, on this log, I can safely run it on the table and fence through the blade to square up the other two sides. And I can do this without the sled or some other jig, which takes away from the maximum cut height of my blade. I'm going to do this in a couple of passes, so let's go. While I'm here at the table saw, there's one other trick you can use, and I sometimes do it if the log was a little smaller. All right, so pretend this log is round all over. It doesn't have any square sides. So right now I'm going to be sitting on the table on the round side, and I'm going to be sitting against the fence on the long side. And the problem with the table saw is this fence is short, so if this log has little whoop-de-doos in it, you can't hold it against the fence the whole way, because what happens is those little whoop-de-doos want to push it out, and it's going to go all over the place as those different heights run against this fence. So what you can do, and what I've done in the past for smaller boards, is I'll take a straight edge. I like to use this this level, and then I push both of these through at the same time. So I push the log against the fence, and I push it through with the level, and that makes sure that it's staying straight through the whole cut, and you can usually get a pretty good parallel edge on here doing it that way. And then you can turn it over one more time. All right, so you'll have your flat edge on the table now, the round edge against the saw. This edge would also be rounded over. You run it through with the level one more time. So at that point, you may not have a perfect 90 doing it that way, but you're going to have a workable piece of lumber at that point, where you can use the other conventional methods like running it through on the sled, because now there's less meat. It's not moving around on you. So you should be able to work it into a square timber after doing that little hack. All right. Okay, so the reason I didn't use that hack I just showed you in my milling process now is because it's not easy to do. The bigger diameter and the longer the piece of lumber is, the harder it is to do. I feel like getting those first two flat sides on the joiner is just easier. It takes a little longer because it's a lot of passes, but overall it's easier. Now, had I had a more powerful table saw, being that this is only cedar, I probably could have done this in just two passes. But this is just a 110 volt, 10-inch table saw that doesn't have much oomph, so I had to do this, and I think I did it in 4 passes. All right, so as you can see, my table saw wasn't able to cut all the way through it, and what I'm going to do now is just finish up that cut with the pull saw. Just making sure I have the rip side. Whew. It's getting there slowly but surely. I almost thought of trying the Sawzall, but it never would have come out straight with the Sawzall. All right, so let's see how we did. All right, that looks pretty good. No ridge or anything, some saw marks, but no ridge. I can run that right through the jointer again. But that is looking good. So now we have 3 sides. And again, I can do the same thing. Just run it through the table saw to get that 4th side good. And if anything is not perfectly square, I can just run it through the jointer. Now, I know some of you guys might be saying, well, after you had your right angle there, you could have just put the flat side down and run it through the thickness planer. And I don't know, maybe there are some thickness planers where you could do that, but my thickness planer has the feed rollers on the top. The blade and the feed rollers are on the top. So there's a roller in front, then the blade, and then there's a roller in back that pull it through. And with this being all wonky on the top, it would never feed through. It would I would only be able to get it to the high point. The roller, you know, it would only fit under or into the thickness planer at the highest point, right? I'd have to raise the thickness planer to the highest point of this log. And then as soon as it hit the low spots, the rollers would stop feeding and it would just get stuck there. So the thickness planer really isn't viable for me. So that's why 2 sides on the joiner to get it square, and then I just finish up the rest on the table saw. And you know, I've checked these 2 that I've done already, and they are square all the way around. Now you can see right here, there's a little bit of a ridge. That's how high the table saw cut on this. I just have to plane that off with a hand plane, and then it's totally fine. But yeah, that's how I've done it. It works fairly well. It's a bit time consuming, and obviously this is wet wood. Now that I've milled it up, I'm letting it sit to dry out. Once it dries out for a couple of months, I may cut some planks out of it, and then I'll let that dry further. It's probably going to, you know, once I get it down to like 1.5 inch, 2 inch planks, it's probably going to have to sit for like another 18 months or so out of the sun in the garage to dry to the point where it's usable. But I just thought I'd show you that because if you have some wood that you really like, you really want to mill up, and you don't have a bandsaw, then there are ways to do it. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.